Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move a call of the House.
I need to see some more hands. All right. Move the call of the House as appropriate. Ms. Reynolds, will you please open the machine? Members, please check in.
We're almost there, man. Almost there.
How are you doing?
Tired.
How's this year compared to others?
Similar. That was a little later than normal last night, but we haven't gone. I don't know. It's tough for me to say because I used to be on state affairs. We would go late. We would go to midnight at 1 o'clock all the time. To have no committees, it's been a little more flexible for me. Or it seems similar.
Becker J, Becker K, Beckman, Benavides, Buckner, Catlin, Covarrubias, Danielson, Exum, Foote, Gray, Hamner, Herod, Hooten, Humphrey, Kennedy, Lawrence, Michelson Janae, Pabon, Pedersen, Rankin, Salazar, Sias, Thurlow, Willett, Beckman, Benavides, Catlin, Foote, Gray, Humphrey, Kennedy, Lawrence, Michelson Janae, Pabon, Pedersen, Thurlow, Willett,
Finance Committee is still at their breakfast. Down to 10.
The call of the House will be lifted. Members, we're going to do announcements and introductions for a little while. We do have several things that we have to get done this morning, obviously. But we're going to do announcements and introductions and then call a quick recess. Representative Crefthart.
Thank you. So can I have the attention of the Business Affairs and Labor Committee members? Wherever you are. If you're Business Affairs and Labor Committee members, please raise your hands. No one's listening to me. Business Affairs and... Thanks for having my back, Madam Speaker.
Representative Crefthart.
Business Affairs and Labor Committee members, can I have your attention, please? Let's meet in the back of the chambers at 10:15 so we could say a big thank you to our own Louisa. 10:15 in the back of the chambers. Thank you.
Further announcements or introductions? Representative Janal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Health Insurance and Environment Committee will meet upon adjournment. We have 3 bills. So I'll announce this again, but it's Senate Bill 19, Senate Bill 21, and Senate Bill 300.
Madam Speaker.
Good morning, members. I have a tribute today that I would like to ask Mr. Randall to read at length.
The House of Representatives, convened in the 71st General Assembly, hereby extends sincere commendations to UNICEF USA, Denver volunteers. For over 70 years, across 190 countries and territories, UNICEF has defended the rights of children. UNICEF has helped save more children's lives than any other humanitarian organization by providing health care and immunizations, clean water and sanitation, nutrition, education, and emergency relief. Since the 1950s, Denver, Colorado has had a committed group of UNICEF USA volunteers. The belief that no child should die from preventable causes has driven the local volunteer efforts for more than 60 years. The efforts not only continue to expand, but also to thrive. To put #Children First means to seek and engage more passionate Coloradans. It means to come together as one to use their voice on behalf of the millions of children affected by war, conflict, violence, and disease. The members of the Colorado House of Representatives are proud to recognize Denver UNICEF volunteers for their continued commitment to UNICEF's life-saving work for the most vulnerable children. On request of Speaker of the House Crosanta Duran, given this 9th day of May, 2017, State Capitol in Denver.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, Pro Tem and members. Thank you so much for standing for the tribute. You may be seated. Today I rise to recognize an important organization that helps children throughout the world, UNICEF, specifically our Denver-based group. The Denver-based volunteers have raised over $15,000 throughout the years through their signature event, and the funds have helped UNICEF's education and emergency relief efforts to benefit children and their communities. Apart from the work that they do right here in Denver, the organization as a whole continues to do incredible work for children everywhere. Because of them and other partner organizations, child mortality rates worldwide have fallen by more than half since 1990, with an estimated 30,000 preventable child deaths per day to an approximate 13,000 today. However, we know that there is still a lot of work to be done. I would like to ask some of the people who are here with UNICEF to stand. Miss Suzanne Davis Hornby, Miss Betsy Hofmeister, Miss Anu Rao, Mr. Ibrahim, Miss Uda, and Andrea Colmatero, who has volunteered in my office. Thank you for all of your support and service to the state of Colorado.
Representative Herod.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. Members, I am excited to introduce you guys to the 2017 Colorado Civic Education winner of the year, Civic Educator of the Year. For 19 years, Victoria Bull of North Glen High School, this year's winner of the Governor's Award, Civic Educator of the Year, has engaged students in studying government and the Constitution in depth. Among her accomplishments and characteristics that her nominator praised her for are the fact that her commitment is unparalleled. She spends countless hours outside the classroom, not only preparing her students to participate in the We the People competition, but deepening her own already encyclopedic knowledge and expanding her repertoire of teaching skills. She involves her students in engaging in real-world activities, from deliberating global issues to using education to interact with students in other countries and becoming active citizens. Through such projects as registering voters at school and writing letters to policymakers. I'm sure we've all gotten a few letters from her students. She also mentors other teachers, sharing her successful teaching approaches and her passion for the Constitution. Members, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to the winner of the 2017 Civic Educator of the Year Award, Victoria Bull of North Glen High School, and one of my personal friends. Victoria, will you please stand and be acknowledged? I'm so excited to give her this wonderful plaque. She's only the second name on here, and I hope that we fill this up every single year by inviting folks to this chamber. I also want to give you guys a quick background of Civic Canopy. Civic Canopy is a civic education program in schools all across the state. The one that we might know the best is the We the People program, at which Victoria is the head coach at North Glen High School. We also have Jackie Johnson here of Civic Canopy. She is our Civic Canopy educator. Civic Canopy has been around since 1989. Jackie Johnson, will you please also stand and be acknowledged? Thank you, members. For those of you who need it, Victoria will be around for a little while longer and can help you with the Constitution. Thank you.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Harrod, for that recognition. Colleagues, for those of you that believe that students today don't study the Constitution and they're ignorant of what our nation was founded upon, if you don't have a We the People program in your district and the schools in your district, get it in there. I've been fortunate enough to be a judge on the We the People for several years, and to see young people study the Constitution, explain what it means, and go all the way from the local to the state, the national level. It's an amazing process. So again, I urge you, if you don't have We the People in your districts, make sure they have the contact. Thanks for all you do with We the People.
Any further announcements or introductions? And members, as you arrive, if you are excused, please make sure to check in with Mr. Randall to let him know that you are here. Representative Foote is present. Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for consideration of House Joint Resolution 1031.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for consideration of Resolution HJR 1031. Representative Nordberg. Oh, Mr. Randall, please read the title of HJR 1031.
House Joint Resolution 1031 by Representatives Nordberg and Exum, also Senators Gardner and Merrifield, concerning the designation of the Cimarron Avenue Bridge spanning Interstate 25 in Colorado Springs as the Lieutenant James Jim Downing Bridge.
Representative Nordberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move House Joint Resolution 1031 and ask that it be read at length.
Whereas James Jim Downing was born in Oak Grove, Missouri on August 22, 1913. And whereas in 1932, at the age of 19, Lieutenant Downing enlisted in the United States Navy, serving as gunner's mate first class and postmaster aboard the USS West Virginia in Long Beach, California. And whereas during his time in California, Lieutenant Downing met his wife, Morena, and the two were married just 1 month after the couple was stationed at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii in 1941. And whereas, on the morning of December 7th, 1941, While hosting breakfast for several servicemen at their home on base, Lieutenant Downing, his wife, and his guests heard the sound of explosions in the distance, and then an anti-aircraft shell landed right outside their home, exploding a large crater 25 feet across. And whereas, realizing they were under attack, Lieutenant Downing and his fellow servicemen immediately raced to their ships, among which Lieutenant Downing's ship, the USS West Virginia, had been hit in quick succession by 9 Japanese torpedoes and was in flames and sinking by the time he arrived. And whereas, running into danger, Lieutenant Downing slid down the gun barrel of another ship, the USS Tennessee, to board the USS West Virginia, where he fought to keep the fires from spreading to live ammunition lockers and to save his fellow servicemen. And whereas, upon seeing the dead and wounded, Lieutenant Downing quickly began memorizing the names of his fellow servicemen and later wrote personal letters to their families to let them know that he was with them in their final moments. And whereas, on that day of infamy, 2,403 people died and another 1,143 were wounded, marking the attack on Pearl Harbor as one of the deadliest foreign attacks on United States soil in modern history. And whereas, following the attack on Pearl Harbor, Lieutenant Downing remained in the Navy for another 16 years, eventually serving as the commanding officer of the USS Patapsco during the Korean War from 1952 through 1955, before his retirement in 1956. And whereas, following his retirement, Lieutenant Downing and his wife Morena settled in Colorado with their 7 children and dedicated their lives to helping others deepen their Christian faith through the Navigators ministry. And whereas Lieutenant Downing has provided invaluable historical information about the recounting of his experience at Pearl Harbor, sharing his stories through public speaking, helping to develop interactive educational materials, and publishing a book of his personal account of the attack. And whereas today, at 103 years old, Lieutenant Downing resides in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and is the second oldest known living survivor of the attack on Pearl Harbor. And whereas it is fitting that we honor the life and valor of a man devoted to his family, his country, and his God, who bore witness to one of the most important events in the history of the United States. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 71st General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that the Cimarron Avenue Bridge spanning Interstate 25 in Colorado Springs be designated as the Lieutenant James Jim Downing Bridge, and that the Colorado Department of Transportation may accept and expend gifts, grants, and donations for the purposes of the initial placement of signs visible from Interstate 25 to mark the bridge as the Lieutenant James Jim Downing Bridge, and that the Colorado Department of Transportation may explore a cooperative agreement with the Board of County Commissioners for El Paso County for the maintenance and the markings for the Lieutenant James Jim Downing Bridge.
Representative Norberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, thank you for your attention. Please be seated. This morning we had the distinct honor and privilege to recognize a true American hero, Lieutenant James Jim Downing. On that fateful morning of December 7th, 1941, Jim was at his home when he began hearing explosions in the distance. Minutes later, a shell exploded in his backyard, and he immediately knew something was terribly wrong. Jim made the hectic drive to the harbor, and as he was en route, a plane swooped down behind him and opened fire. He saw the rising sun on its wing and immediately knew they were under attack. Upon arriving at Pearl Harbor, he encountered thick black smoke and no clear way to get to his ship, the USS West Virginia. But eventually he found a path, albeit a very clever one. He jumped onto the adjoining USS Tennessee and slid down its gun barrel and landed on the deck of the USS West Virginia. As soon as he was on board the burning ship, he grabbed a hose to put out fires that otherwise would have made their way to the ship's munitions locker. His actions prevented additional catastrophic explosions and saved countless lives. And members, for context, this image, starting from left to right, the left is the USS West Virginia, in the middle there is the USS Tennessee, and on the right is the USS Arizona. So pretty incredible to swivel the gun barrel to jump onto the deck of the adjoining ship. Jim's heroics didn't end there. He tended to his injured shipmates, and to those that were mortally wounded, he went around and memorized the names on their dog tags to ensure that their loved ones would know what had happened. He took it upon himself to personally write those families. In total, Jim's service to our country in the Navy spanned 24 years. However, his dedication to service did not cease after his career in the military came to an end. Rather, the same honorable character displayed during the events of Pearl Harbor are still evident today in his everyday actions. After leaving the Navy, Jim dedicated his life to his faith, pursuing the ministry, and demonstrating himself as a man of God to all those around him. He also made it his mission to continue the memory of Pearl Harbor, teaching multiple generations about the events that took place on that day of infamy, and ensuring that the legacy of the 2,403 Americans lost will never be forgotten. Members, for those of you who are not familiar with the bridge we're renaming, the Cimarron Bridge, it more or less serves as the gateway to Colorado Springs. And that's why it is so fitting that it be renamed after a man who exemplifies the values of our city. Jim's faith in God, love of country, and commitment to helping others should serve as an example to all of us and embodies why his is truly the greatest generation. Members, I thank you for your attention. Representative Exum, I thank you for sponsoring this resolution with me, and we respectfully ask for a yes vote on House Joint Resolution 1031.
Representative Exum.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm honored to share this the podium with my colleague and friend, Representative Nordborg. Just to reiterate a couple of points about James Jim Downing, not being the second oldest survivor of the attack on Pearl Harbor that killed 2,400 Americans is truly amazing. And not to go back over any of the points that I've mentioned before, but I'm just honored to honor Jim Downing, and I simply say God's blessings over you, sir, and that God's angels will continue to hover over you for your remaining years. Thank you very much, and thank you, members.
Representative Liston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Nordberg and Representative Exum, for sponsoring this resolution. I've had the distinct pleasure, colleagues, of meeting Mr. Downing. I'm sure you won't remember it, but I met him about 4 or 5 years ago at the Pearl Harbor Remembrance in Colorado Springs. Every year, we have the remembrance of Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. And he is quite a gentleman. And I encourage everybody not only to meet him, but to learn more about what happened on that day of infamy, December 7th, 1941. It truly woke America up that there are adversaries in the world, and that event obviously brought us into World War II. I can also relate to it. My mother, prior to meeting my father, knew a young Marine who served on the USS Arizona, and she had communicated with him. And after Pearl Harbor, she never heard from him again. So he is one of the soldiers that is entombed permanently on the USS Arizona. And my father, who you've heard me speak about, was a pilot during World War II. He got his wings 4 days before Pearl Harbor, and immediately was flying up and down the coast of California because at that time we thought that that an invasion from the Japanese was imminent. My father, during the war, I'm sure, flew in and out of Pearl Harbor numerous times. So I encourage you all not only to meet one of the few people that is still alive today that can recount the stories of Pearl Harbor, but to get a book sometime and read about it. It's most informative and really tells what a great event, unfortunate event it was on that day of infamy. So God bless you, Mr. Downing. Thank you for your service. Appreciate it very much.
Any further discussion? The question before us is a passage of HJR 1031. All of those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying no. HJR 1031 is adopted. Representative Exum.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, we'd like to introduce this wonderful servant in our midst. Okay, thank you. Madam Speaker, I move that the morning roll call be added as co-sponsors, please.
Seeing no objection, the morning roll call will be added as co-sponsors.
Thank you very much. Members, please welcome James Jim Downing and his caretaker, Carol Dodge.
Mr. Downing, that was an incredible story. On behalf of the entire General Assembly, it's a true honor to have a real American hero here. Thank you for all of your service to our country. With that, Representative Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Education Committee members, we are going to be meeting as we go into a brief recess to hear Senate Bill 61.
House will stand in a brief recess.
Here in the well.
There you go. It's official now. So come to order. Any further announcements or introductions? Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I have all the people in here who have been teachers? Come on down. Rep. Mitzbush? Teachers. Rep. Navarro's coming? Educators is pretty close.
Right about me. Close enough.
Teacher.
Come on in.
Teacher.
Certified Coast Guard instructor.
Wow. Good for you. I
Teach
didn't know that.
Teach the weather class.
Is Navarro here?
Faculty at Metro
There.
Faculty at Metro counts.
And navigator.
Student advisors. Advisor counts. National Teacher Day. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Can you pound, please? Thank you.
Representative
Thank you,
McLaughlin.
Madam Speaker. Today is National Teacher Day. I would like all of you to call a teacher, write a teacher, tell someone that you appreciate their hard work. It ain't an easy job. So thank you, and we'd like to celebrate all teachers everywhere. All of these guys are teachers. Look how many we have in the house. This is pretty darn wonderful. So thank you.
Do you have the awards or anything? Oh.
No, that was it. I got nothing.
All right, any further announcements or introductions this morning? Seeing no further announcements or introductions, the next order of business is third reading of bills. Mr. Randall, please read the title. Members, we are going into third reading. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1091.
House Bill 1091 by Representatives Wilson and McLaughlin, all Senators Quorum and Donovan, concerning the creation of a credit against state income tax to promote employer-assisted housing projects in rural areas.
Assistant Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1091 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is a passage of House Bill 1091 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no discussion, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Winkle. Representative Van Winkle, that will be $3. Please close the machine. With 38 yes votes, 27 no votes, House Bill 1091 is passed. Co-sponsors. Co-sponsors. Co-sponsors for housing. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1373.
House Bill 1373 by Representatives Hanson and Bridges, also known as Moreno, concerning general fund transfers to Colorado Energy Office cash funds.
Assistant Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1373 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1373 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no discussion, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 37 yes votes, 28 no votes, House Bill 1373 is passed. Co-sponsors. Co-sponsors.
We're doing the House bills.
Please close the machine. Assistant Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To make sure we get the House bills over to the Senate, I move to proceed out of order for immediate consideration of House Bill 1375.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for the immediate consideration of HB 1375. Mr. Randall, please read the title of HB 1375.
House Bill 1375 by Representatives Pedersen and Sias, also Senators Hill and Williams, concerning measures to increase transparent equity in educating students in public schools and in connection therewith requiring school districts to distribute mail levy revenue to meet the needs of students, creating a fund and provide equalizing money in district charter schools and requiring school districts charter schools to post statute list statutory waivers received.
Assistant Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1375 on third reading and final passage.
Question before us is the passage of House Bill 1375 on third reading and final passage. We're seeing no discussion. Just kidding. Representative Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to get permission for a third reading amendment.
Okay. There is a request for permission for a third reading amendment. Representative Pedersen, would you like to tell us why?
Julie Pellegrin told me that we had to do this. This is a technical amendment. It is something that she caught that she put in the new version incorrectly, and so I ask for your support.
Okay. With that, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote on the request for permission for a third reading amendment.
Oh, yes.
Representative Buck, Representative Hooton, Representative Catlin, Representative Lawrence, Representative Pabon, Representative Rankin, Representative Sane, please vote. Please close the machine. With 65 yes votes, 0 no votes, the request for permission for a third reading amendment is granted. That takes us to the passage of L010. Seeing no further discussion, Ms. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Buck, Representative Buckner, Representative Catlin, Representative Nordberg, Representative Wilson, please vote. Please close the machine. With 65 yes votes, 0 no votes, L010 is passed. Takes us back to the passage of House Bill 1375 as amended. Is there discussion? Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'm happy to support the technical amendment, but I do need to vote no on this bill, and I wanted to say why. I want to talk briefly about what 1375 does and what it does not do. I think what it does is it presents a better, more refined choice than another measure that has been in front of the General Assembly, and I appreciate the work that the sponsors have put into bringing it forward in that respect. I also think, very importantly, it gives this body a chance to vote on a very important question of policy, distinctly from the School Finance Act itself. I think the School Finance Act is about setting figures by which we fund public education in Colorado, and I think that legislation ought to be free of collateral policy choices, especially ones as consequential as this one. So again, I am grateful to the sponsors and everybody else who helped to effect that separation. However, what 1375 does not do is fully address my underlying concern with the entire debate all along. It does not fully address my concern with overriding local decisions that have been made in school districts across the state, including the 2 school districts that I represent, Aurora Public Schools and Cherry Creek, both of which have authorized charter schools. APS has 10 charter schools operating or coming online in the near future, and in 2012, voters in APS authorized a mill levy override, which is shared with charter schools. That was the decision of the voters. Prior to that, in 2008, voters approved a different mill levy override, which was not distributed at that point to charters, and that too was the decision of the voters. So because I have these underlying concerns, and because both of the districts that I represent, totaling close to 80,000 or so students, are opposed, I'm not able to support this legislation today, although I acknowledge the work that has gone into bringing it here. And I think we need to continue to talk about education funding in this state, and I'm aware that there is a conversation about an interim committee or some other vehicle to step back and take a fundamental look about the extent of funding and how it is distributed. And I think that's an appropriate and important conversation to have. And I hope that at some point, an even more fundamental measure than this one can come forward that I will be able to support. But I cannot support this measure today.
Representative Jackson.
We're going to do it together, right? You want to do this part?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to defer to my colleague here first off.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members, good morning. I rise in opposition to this bill, and we had a very interesting and lengthy debate on this yesterday. And something kind of kept me up last night that was said here in the well, and that was a comparison between this bill and the Brown versus Board of Education debate. And that not passing this bill would bring about the same inequity and injustice that court decision sought to remedy. I think I've talked to you all at some point or another about my own educational experience. I grew up here in Denver, and I went to Thomas Jefferson High School. And at that time, it was the most diverse school in the state. We were 50% white, 30% black, 15% Latino, and 5% of other races. And as you walk through the hallways, you could see that. You could see that diversity. You could see those different cultures. But in the classroom, you didn't. In the classroom, you either saw all minorities in one class or all white students in another. I came to find out it was because they picked classes for accelerated and advanced placement based on your zip code and not based on your achievement level. And so when I discovered this, I made sure to apply to get into the advanced placement program, and I was one of 2 blacks that graduated out of that program, out of the most diverse school in the state. It is not lost on me what Brown versus Board of Education was trying to remedy and the reforms that they were trying to make. That is not lost on me at all. What that was trying to address was true discrimination. But when we talk about charter schools and when we talk about this bill, we're talking about school choice. And I'm sorry, but members, not every family has that choice. Not every district provides the choice of being able to choose which school you go to, whether that's a traditional school or a charter school. And so that's the reason why we have school boards. I'm not a school board member, you're not a school board member. There are elected people to decide and determine the best course for their districts, for their communities. And what this bill does is it takes away that local control. I keep hearing that this is a compromise bill, but members, this bill is not a grand compromise. There were large stakeholder meetings, but when the final touches were being put into this draft, there were no superintendents or district CFOs in the room. Not a single one. Charter school advocates were in the room. Not those whose duty it is to craft and manage school district budgets. and who are to answer to their elected school boards. If this were a true compromise, there would be a groundswell of school districts asking for you to vote for this bill. But that is not this case. It's interesting to hear that this entire exercise has been based on an assertion that districts are ignoring the will of their voters by not adequately sharing the proceeds of their mill levy override with their charter schools. But if the will of the voters were truly being ignored, members, then we would surely see court cases coming up. We would surely see more conversation and more demand from parents to have this happen. But we're not seeing that. And that has never happened because our laws favor local control, and the plaintiffs would not have won. Ironically, passage of this bill surely sets the stage for another round of litigation. But this time the schools will end up challenging the constitutionality of this bill. Members, again I say, I am not a school board member and neither are you. Let's leave this in the hands of local control. I ask for a no vote.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I also want to applaud the sponsors of this bill for their incredibly lengthy and hard work. I appreciate pieces of this. I very much appreciate the issues regarding transparency in this measure. But as my fine colleague from Aurora mentioned, there are numerous stakeholders, numerous school districts who do not feel as though they were at the table. I've got a list of some of them. My phone has been blowing up since we started hearing about 1375. So a few of these folks have contacted me. I'm going to give you just a partial list. These are school districts who have actually asked us to oppose this legislation. Academy 20, Adams 12. Yes, my fine school district, Aurora Public Schools, who, I might add, already has contracts to share their mill levy dollars. They don't want to have to renegotiate those contracts. Cherry Creek Schools, Manitou Springs, Fountain, Fort Carson, Harrison, Lewis Palmer, Littleton, Widefield, Woodland Park, the Poudre Valley School District, the Boulder Valley School District, and folks, CASB, the Colorado Association of School Boards. This is not a small list of stakeholders who are vehemently against this particular piece of legislation. We've heard a lot about local control. It is up to those school boards. It is up to those elected officials, those people that our constituents put into office to decide how best to fund their own charter schools. I join my colleague from Aurora in asking for a no vote.
Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, there was a lot of debate on this yesterday, and first I do want to thank the bill sponsors because you worked so doggone hard, and I get that. You worked really hard to put together a bill to bring to this body, and we should always appreciate that kind of work, and I do. And I don't support this bill, but I still want to acknowledge the work that you put into it. We heard a lot of debate on this yesterday, and I want to echo what my colleagues talked about in terms of this argument that was floated out there It was somewhat of an offensive argument comparing Brown versus Board of Education and discrimination, to not voting for this bill. And I said here at the well yesterday that I thought that the argument was obtuse, and I still stand behind that, especially after I spoke with one of our Latino schools here in the Denver metro area. It's a 90% free and reduced school servicing around 90% Latino kids. And I gave them the language and I asked them to take a look at it. And their response was, this doesn't help us. Seems to be pretty definitive for me that this bill isn't on the same lines of Brown versus Board of Education or would result in discrimination if we don't vote for it. But there's other reasons why I don't support this bill as well. And one of those reasons was the whole mill levy issue of going back to mill levies that were voted upon by the voters and reaching back into that money to divvy it up. Money that the voters voted for, but not with the knowledge of this bill. Monies that the voters voted for, not knowing that this bill was coming. Monies that are likely already spent by those school districts now that their mill levies have gone through 7-8 months ago. And now we're saying we're going to thwart the will of the voters. We're going to modify it without their knowledge, without their input, and we're going to reach back into past mill levies because we say so. And that's not fair. That's not fair for this body to say that to school districts. That thank you very much for passing your mill levy. Now we're going to tell you what you're going to do with it 8 months later, after you've maybe already spent it. There's an inherent problem with that, guys. Your instincts should tell you that there is a problem with that. Right within your gut, you should feel it, that it's not cool to make changes in the law and retroactively apply it to the voters' will and the voters not knowing what we were going to do in the future. I hope that you think carefully about that. I have. In fact, I thought carefully all of about 2 seconds because my gut told me that this was wrong. That's why I brought the amendment. And unfortunately, it didn't pass. But I'm hoping that now on third reading, when it's a little bit more quiet, people are presumably listening, that your guts will tell you that that is not cool. You don't do that to the voters. So while I appreciate Representative Sias, Representative Pedersen, and their very, very hard work in bringing this bill, I am a strong no vote to House Bill 1375.
Representative Martins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you to the bill sponsors. I'm a strong opponent of this bill, too. I was a public school teacher, as you know, and the first day the union came and said, would you like to join the union? We're having an action tonight and we're not going to go to back to school night. And I said, that's too bad. I just called all the parents of my special needs students, told them I'd meet them tonight. I'm coming to back to school night and I'm not joining your union. And I never did join the union. I was a good teacher. I worked for my students. I kept my eye on the ball. I didn't like what the union was doing. There were teachers who clearly needed to not be in the classroom and they weren't helping them get them out. I was an early proponent of charter schools. I'm still a fan of charter schools. I'm a fan of innovation. I'm a fan of change. I'm not scared of change. I am a risk taker. But I'm also a fan of working to reform things from within. We have darn good public schools. The vast majority of our teachers are absolutely fantastic. They're committed, they work hard, they have no pay. We take advantage of them. We take them for granted. We ask them to feed our kids. We used to give haircuts at my school. We used to bring in boxes of clothes for the kids. All of a sudden, the school wasn't a place where you just got to be a teacher. You had to provide a whole lot more services, and they've stepped up to that, and they do that each and every day. And charter school teachers do that too. I'm not talking about public school teachers. I'm talking about everybody. And charter schools are public schools. They're publicly funded. I've also served on 2 school boards. I cannot vote for this bill that takes away power from our locally elected school boards. I was a school board member. That's why I only have 2 molars left. Each school board, I lost a molar. When I moved back to Fort Collins, they said, "You're running for school board." I said, "I only have 2 molars left." They said, "Okay, state rep." I said, "All right, fine." So, and last year I had 2 crowns put on from grinding my teeth. I am not opposed to charter schools. A vote against this bill is not a vote against charter schools. This is a vote in favor of the, if you vote no, it's a vote in favor of exactly what Representative Salazar was talking about. What the voters said, what they meant when they voted for those mill levies, what they said when they voted in that school board, who they trust, who's closest to the situation. Fort Collins, we've always had school choice. I went out of the school boundaries for junior high. My mom said, "You're going over there. You ride your bike, get out of the house." Okay, go. I went. That was back then. But we've always had school choice, and now we just call it school choice. Before, we just said, get them to go to school and go where your brothers go. Now there's a new school, and you're in that district. And she said, "I'm not going to 4 different back-to-school nights, so you're all going to clump up at the old one." I said, "Fine." And now we formalized it. We call it school choice. We've allowed for innovation. We have charters. I'm a fan. My personal kids have gone to private, they've gone to public, I've homeschooled them. I'm agnostic on these things. I want the best for the kid in the right situation. I want the best for the teachers in the right situation. But when the state steps in and mandates shared mill levies, what the voters have not voted for, and tells our locally elected school boards what to do, I'm a no. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Representative Lundin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the members who've brought this bill. We spent a lot of time on process last night. What this piece goes here, that piece goes there, how do these things all fit together? But now we have an opportunity in the calm and clear light of today to talk about the principles, what this legislation is actually about. And it's about a few key elements. But before I speak to that, let me refute a couple points that have been made that are inaccurate. The survey of the ballot language that the voters looked at talks about students broadly. It isn't prescriptive in almost every case. And the expectation is that it's for all the students of the district. That's pretty clear in all the ballot language that you will look at. When we heard this bill, we actually heard from opponents. And the strongest argument the opponents could bring was they weren't sure. They really didn't know specifically what the people might have thought or might have understood, but certainly they could not conclude that the voters thought something other than this is about all of the students of the district. So to what this legislation actually does, it promotes a very, very important principle, and that is it is the will of the elected representatives of the people of Colorado that we shall treat all students equitably, that there aren't students who we would give a second-class status to. That is a broad principle that we must all defend, and that's what this legislation does. It does another thing that actually kind of puts our money where our mouth is. It says that we're going to, because we believe that all students should be treated equitably, we're going to make sure that the money, in fact, flows in that way. Now, I will tell you, I'm a bit of a wild and woolly, Wild West charter kind of guy. I truly believe in choice in all forms because students come in all forms, and we need to provide learning opportunities that meet them where they are at. And this particular legislation, as negotiated and renegotiated, narrows significantly in ways that I'm, quite frankly, uncomfortable with, and provides a little more constraint on what I would prefer would be a more wild and woolly set of choice and charter opportunities for students. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that. But the reality is, in total, I cannot turn my back on the principle that this bill holds so high and so clear, and that is that we, the members of this body and the broader General Assembly, believe that all students should be treated equitably. I urge your support of this very important bill.
Representative Benavides.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to as well thank the sponsors for the hard work on this bill. But I'm rising in opposition to this bill. You know, I've heard a lot, and my colleague who just spoke about this is about all students. You know, kids are kids, I agree. And I've heard the proponents talk about it doesn't matter if they're at a charter school or a district school, they're all the same. But we are overlooking that there is a difference between charter schools and district schools. We can pretend there's not a difference, but there's a difference. They operate under other different rules. Charter schools have to be authorized. They get automatic waivers of certain requirements that district schools have. You know, why don't we let the district schools have those automatic waivers? You know, they can also apply for other waivers. They can operate fairly independently, where in district schools they have other restrictions on them. And we can sit here and pretend that all the students are equal no matter what school, because the schools are equal, but they are not equal. And that's the difference. When district schools bring these mill levies, they have very intentional purposes in mind. And so when we say we don't care what you have in mind, districts, we're going to tell you how you're going to divide that up. We already have a law that allows them to make those determinations independently, instead of us saying you have to do it this way. And I can tell you, I heard some people talk about their backgrounds and as teachers. I was never a teacher except in college for a year or two. But I grew up and went to Manual High School. I graduated in '72. That was before busing. And I can tell you, probably 99% of our school were kids of color. And we were in a very low economic area. Was that school equal with other schools? Absolutely not. Actually, the year after I graduated, there was a suit brought, the Keys case, to say that DPS was discriminating against students. Those are real facts. You know, in the 90s, I co-chaired the Latino Education Coalition. We worked with districts because students were treated differently. And so schools are not the same. They are treated differently. You know, as an attorney, I represented Padres Unidos in some of the final hearings of that Keys case. There's real differences, and we can pretend as much as we want that there's no difference between kids at a charter school and kids at a district school, but there is. And schools make that choice because, you know, we have kids at private schools. Private schools are specifically exempted. So if we have a mill levy for all kids and we all vote on it, why shouldn't private schools? Because there's laws to prevent that. Just the same way there's laws in existence to prevent districts from having to share these funds with charter schools. So I want you to really consider that. I know Representative Jackson mentioned that we have received a lot of emails and calls, and in my district in Adams County, we have a couple of failing districts, and they really struggle. And when they do a mill levy, it's very purposeful.
And for us to come in and say, we don't really care about that, we want you to distribute it this way. And it's even for all existing mill levies. The amendment that was attempted last night to only be for mill levies going forward didn't pass. So this is existing monies that district schools have already determined where it should go. And we're saying you have to change that. We don't care what you had decided before. That's the whole purpose of local control. If we didn't want local control, then why do we even have separate school districts? Let's just let the State Board of Education make that determination. This is a real intrusion on that local control. And I would hope that members, you're not misled by this. I care about kids. You know, my kids went through public schools, and what they had before charter schools was something called magnet schools, where they had a choice school, and both of my daughters went to magnet schools throughout their public school career, which was their entire school career. And those are real, and they're important, and they should be supported. But if somebody makes a choice to go to a charter school, the charter schools knew what they were doing when they started. We don't have to fix those problems. They do a business plan, they can raise money, they can take care of that. District schools are more constrained, and we have to respect the choices that district schools are making. So I'm going to stand in opposition to this. Thank you.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank the bill sponsors. Thanks to you for this, and you're going to understand why I said that. You know, when I came to this chamber, some of those had been here far longer than I had and were far wiser, which didn't take a lot to find those folks. But when I came to this chamber, they said that good legislation is legislation that there's something there for everyone to hate. And I would have to say that's a good job. You've done well on that. Having been involved with charters actively in education from the time they actually began, when Representative Sias talked about this, I thought there is no way that you're going to get this done. And folks, if you haven't taken on a bill like this and carried it into the last few days of the session, you have no idea when we get up here in the well and say, thank you for your work. You have no idea. You can ask Representative Buckner about the ride her husband and I took on the assessment bill, 1323. I've never been jerked through so many knotholes in my life. I mean, it was brutal. My hair was brown when I started that bill. In the end, 82 out of 100 legislators voted for it. 82. After I recovered from the knothole injuries, I confronted some of those who beat me up so badly and said, why did you do that? I said, oh, we kind of liked the bill, so we wanted to vote for it. I said, seriously. So my point, folks, as we look at what's going on right now, when we say thanks to the sponsors, I mean, make sure you understand what's involved with that. And quite frankly, when Representative Lundeen got up here and said, I'm not comfortable with some of the things in this bill, I thought, yes. You know, understand what he said. That's what we're talking about in this. So I really don't know how you guys got this thing this far, but don't be surprised when many come over to your side.
Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good morning, colleagues. And Representative Wilson, many of you don't know that Representative Wilson and I used to work together. He was the superintendent of schools in Salida. I was superintendent of schools in Summit County. And so we go back quite a while. And I do appreciate all of your comments this morning. It means a lot. And I, too, thank the bill sponsors. I just want to commend the work of the Education Committee. They met this morning around the well. And they postponed indefinitely. Sorry, like many of you, I've been up all night. I don't know why. And that bill was toxic. It had become a very polarizing bill in the legislative session. And because of the work of Representative Pedersen and Representative Sias and the work of the Education Committee, that bill has been put to rest. There were many issues with Senate Bill 61 that were problematic for all of us, for all of our districts. And that bill was a heavy hand of state government telling districts what to do. So what has happened here instead is a solution that puts decision-making back in the hands of the district with options. It isn't the state government telling districts what to do and defining equity for districts. Senate Bill 61 defined equity as sharing money with charter schools. What these legislators have done is shifted that conversation in a hugely meaningful way to defining equity based on what children need. If nothing else, that's why I stand in support of their efforts and in support of House Bill 1375. Not to mention that districts now, most of our districts are already doing this work with their charter schools and are being very effective in that job. And this bill allows districts 3 years, if they aren't already having these conversations, to start these incredibly important conversations about what is it we can be doing better and differently for children. So members, I ask you to commend the great work of these legislators and the great work that has happened here in the House of Representatives, and hopefully will carry on into the Senate, and ask for your support of House Bill 1375. Thank you.
Further discussion. Representative Buckner.
Oh, that's as far as it'll go, huh? I have lost, I know they say don't marry a bill. I've married this bill. When I came last year, this bill was the cause of a lot of lost sleep because I really did not like what 61 was all about. I really, really disliked 61. So this year, you all have no idea how many meetings I attended, some with Representative Pedersen, some by myself. I call myself the great collaborator down here because I feel like I have that ability to work with everyone and understand and hear everything you're saying. I'm all about the fundamental, basic, traditional school. That's how I was brought up, and I really believe in the traditional school. I grew up with segregation, and it was awful. My husband grew up with segregation, and it was awful. But I keep searching my heart, and I'm not going to be popular because of my vote probably. No matter which way I vote, I'm not going to be popular. But if I consider myself a leader here at the Capitol and a leader in my community, I have to do what's right. My Aurora delegation is torn over this issue. I'm torn. But my husband would tell me to do what I think is right. I don't like a lot of 1375. I really don't like a lot of it. But we have come so doggone far. We have come so doggone far in this process. And this is not going away. This is not going away. I feel that if we pass this bill, if we see some wrongdoing in our traditional schools, then we as legislators have to make sure we do something about it. I have Cherry Creek schools. I have 2 school districts, Cherry Creek and Aurora Public Schools. Cherry Creek only has 2 charter schools. They've been slow to get to this process, but they are not against charter schools. I also have Aurora Public Schools who are adamantly opposed to this bill. However, they have 6 or 7 charter schools, and those schools are doing well. And unfortunately, I talked to Rico Munn yesterday at Hart about this. One of the pieces of this bill that I really dislike is the fact that he signed some contracts back in 2008. So there are some prearranged parts of this bill that will not help him. But at this point, I'm Vice Chair of Education. I don't like being pulled apart like this, and I also don't like the division I have seen because of this bill. But you have to vote your heart and do what's right for the kids. And if you'd been in all those meetings with us, and yes, some of you weren't in all of these meetings, there were tons of meetings where we broke this down and broke it down. And we're talking about equity, closing the achievement gap. And there are so many portions of this bill that will help us do this. So you have to vote your heart, but you also have to know how far we have come. We have come so far with this bill. And as Javon and I just talked about, Rep. Melton, we're not there yet. We're closer. But this bill does have the flexibility for school districts to be able to make some of those tough decisions. And all I can say is you have to vote your heart to date, but please hear me out and know how hard we worked to get to this point.
Representative Kraftart. I want to say thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative Sias. Thank you, Representative Pedersen. I got to tell you, I'm back and forth on this. 1 minute I'm a yes, and 1 minute I'm a no. And in the short time I slept last night, it was in my dreams, unfortunately, or in my nightmares. I appreciate more than anyone the ability to find the common ground and the ability to find that pathway forward. The dilemma here is that our constituents and our districts are not in the same place as some of the stakeholding processes that you have conducted. The emails I've been getting, the Facebook, the social media, we have not been able to bring everyone along. People are so upset. I come from a district where we have equalization. And people in my district are so upset. We have not been able to bring them forward. So I don't know where we're at. I don't know if this bill, I would like to say that even though we are almost done, I don't think this bill is ready. I don't think this bill is at that point. But like I said, until we get the lights up, I don't know where I'll be, back and forth. This is not about the worth of children, which is what we see in the emails. This is not about some children being worth more than others. That's not what this issue is. Yeah, I think this is a difficult one, and I commend that we tried to find it. I don't think we've quite found the pathway, though. Thank you.
Representative Lebsack.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I think if this debate today just teaches us one thing, is that diversity of thought is a good idea. And I think we should listen to each other. The debate today is the very reason why I was so adamant yesterday of having the discussion on Senate Bill 296 and having a clean school finance bill. Now do the members understand why I did what I did yesterday? It's absolutely imperative, and as long as I'm here, if I'm here next session, we will do the same thing again next year, Madam Speaker. We are going to have a clean school finance bill, and I will not allow any more ornaments on the Christmas tree.
Representative Lebsack to House Bill 1375.
And so to this bill, Madam Speaker, obviously there's a lot of division. We haven't reached the compromise. That's some of the words that people are saying, but it's not. When you have a list as long as a piece of paper of how many school districts oppose this legislation, it's not the compromise. You worked hard. I commend that. But when you have Academy 20 and Adams 12, which is my school district, I think it's the second or third largest school district in the in the state. When you have Aurora Public Schools opposed to this bill, Cherry Creek Schools, Cheyenne Mountain, Fountain, Fort Carson, Harrison, Lewis Palmer, Littleton, Widefield, Woodland Park, that's just a few of them. List goes on and on and on, members. We haven't found the compromise. I commend you for your hard work, but I'll be a no on the bill.
Representative Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. How y'all doing? Good. Let's get a little bit happier in here. I don't come down to the well very often, and this is an issue that I think a lot of people assume that I would come down on, and we've been talking about it since last night. And quite frankly, I don't have anything to say to rebut the arguments against this bill or for this bill. I mean, I could say something about those things, but you've already heard those multiple times over. I think the one thing that I look forward to during my time here, especially on issues of education, is focusing on kids. I'm so tired of talking about governance models. I've been doing school choice work for the past 6 years. Whether it's public charter, traditional public, private, I really don't care. I echo the sentiments of Representative Arndt talking about she doesn't care either, and that she put her kids in various types of schools. All of us have kids, or most of us. And if you have kids, all you care about when the day is done is that they have access to quality education. I think the bottom line for me on this bill is that there are 115,000 kids, at least in public charter schools across the state of Colorado. My house district, for the past 6 or 7 years, when the DPS turnaround happened, has so many charter schools in it that a majority of our kids are in charter schools in House District 7. And although DPS already does this and they support equitable funding, I think about one child at a time. And I think there are kids that may be in a school district that doesn't do equitable funding. And I ask myself, how much choice did that child have in determining where they were going to go to school? Let's say the parents had a choice to go to a great traditional public school and a great public charter school or a great private school. How often does that happen in Colorado? But there are many, 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 many more cases, I can promise you that, like me. I'm not here to boast, get up here and get my campaign rolling, talking positively about school choice. It's just my story. Everybody has a story. But if I could have gone to a traditional public school that would have taken me, I would have. But I got kicked out of enough of them where it wasn't an option anymore, and it sucks. It's the same thing with public charters, but those schools weren't open and available at the time. And the only option I had was a private school that we couldn't afford to go to, and the only way I was able to get there was on a scholarship. That's a shame. But that's the reality for a ton of kids here in this state. So for the kids who don't have an option, when the only option they have, unfortunately in my house district, because of all the turnaround that's happened, good or bad, is a charter school, how can we tell those kids, like those in my community, or kids in other house districts that don't, or school districts that don't have equitable funding, that, hey, you know what, that was the only option you had, and it's unfortunate for you that we don't support this. The last thing I'll say is, we need to stop talking about, again, in terms of governance models. If you have a problem with accountability and you don't think charter schools are held accountable, let's fix that. I'm on the board of a charter school, and I ask my staff every day, what are you afraid of? You afraid of accountability? You're afraid of testing? What is it that you think you have the autonomy to do because you're a charter school that traditional public schools have to do? Because you're going to be doing those things as well. We don't discriminate and not allow certain kids to come into schools, but that's not the way it is for every charter school, and that's the unfortunate reality. So why don't we make it, instead of making it about school types and governance models, let's make it about kids. Improve those schools. Fix it so that the excuses you have. Why can't traditional public schools fundraise the same way that public charters can? Let's fix that. If it's an issue with the law, let's fix that. If it's an issue with funding, why don't we come together and make sure the schools have the funding they need outside of what we do here as a state? Or outside of what we do here in our individual districts, or our individual cities when we have raised money on bond and meal issues. We could do this all day and debate back and forth, but at the end of the day, it comes back to kids. So let's fix those issues. This bill isn't about that, unfortunately. This bill isn't about fixing those issues. This bill is about a child today in a school that they may or may not have a choice to go to because it was the fourth or fifth option for them, and they did fill out the DPS form or whatever form you have in your school district. And you wanted your first, second, and third option, but you couldn't get it. So now you're stuck. And because you're stuck in a failed school choice system even, you don't have access to equitable funding and therefore equitable resources to get a quality education. And we're saying the unfortunate reality for you is we're penalizing you because of governance models. Can we, in the next year or however long I'm here, I don't know if I'm going to get reelected, but can we stop talking about governance models and start talking about kids? We should have great traditional public schools, great public charter schools, and private school options and accessibility to those. We should have that. Lion's share of kids will always be in traditional public schools. I agree with that. We've got to have the funding and the resources and the accountability for all schools across the board. But if one more person comes up here and starts talking, this is not a threat, this is not an angry black man, but if one more person comes up here and starts talking about governance models and accountability, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Speak your voice. Yeah. No, speak your voice. Speak your message. Stop telling what other people are telling you to say. If you truly believe what you're saying, then let's fix the problem with the system. But not at the expense of kids today. I'm not saying anybody's doing that, but that's sure what it sounds like, man. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Representative Bridges.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As low as it'll go. So I could stand up here and I could talk about the lengthy process that was gone through to get where we are today, the months of conversations, the meetings, the negotiations, the phone calls. I could talk about exactly when in that process districts were brought in, which was very early. I could talk about the process inside this room and the negotiations among different members to try and get folks on board with where we are and how we got to where we are today. But you guys know that this has been worked. You know that there is literally no room either way to move on this that keeps the coalition together that we have together. That's just a fact. And yes, many districts, a minority, but many districts are opposed to this bill. Now, if you added up all of the students in charter schools in Colorado, that would constitute the biggest district in Colorado, but you're right. There are some districts in this state that are opposed to this bill. But it's not because we're telling them what to do. Because the only thing we're telling them to do is something that every district should already be doing, and that is treat all of your kids like they're your kids. That is the only thing we are asking in this bill. The way you do that is entirely up to the district. The program they can create can consist of anything. Take into account varsity sports, take into account after-school programs, ELL kids, kids with special needs, free and reduced lunch kids. Do it any way you want, but treat all of your kids like they are your kids. This bill is about kids. and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Representative Sias.
You know, members, I never expected when I was thinking about talking about this bill that Clint Eastwood would come to mind. But after listening to Representative Coleman, Representative Hamner, Representative Bridges, I am reminded that a man must know his limitations. And my ability to follow those comments with anything that I think will express to you what went into this, what it does, how fair it is, I feel very limited in my ability to do that. I will therefore keep my remarks very, very brief and say I absolutely appreciate the hard work of Representative Pedersen, the members of the Education Committee in putting this together. And what I will tell you is that as we crafted this solution, we tried very, very hard to focus on the will of the people. And I would encourage all of you, we hear a lot of things about this, but read the actual mill levy language. It's a little nerdy, but if you read it, what you'll see is that in every single case, it is all about all of the kids. And so what this legislation is trying to do is to give voice to what those parents, what those voters actually voted on, which is funding for all our kids. And what this legislation does, and I credit Representative Pedersen and her colleagues with expanding the scope of this, because the point of this is that any child, and we know all kids are different, any child, whether it's Representative Arndt's example of a special education child who may in fact cost more to educate than some of his or her peers who don't face the same challenges, but whether it's that child or any other kid, all this is saying is treat them equitably, treat them fairly, regardless of what public school they go to in your district. Is it innovation? Is it magnet? Is it option? Is it charter? Is it traditional? It doesn't matter. Just treat them fairly. That's what this is about. I know there's been a lot said about this, but if you dig in, and I would encourage you to, that's what this is about. Thank you all very, very much for listening, for supporting this, and I encourage and I vote from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem and members. I want to start off by commending all of the leaders who have been part of coming up with this compromise. Representative Pedersen and Representative Sias, Minority Leader Neville, and many others who have been part of the conversation to not do things like we have done in previous years, and to be willing to have tough conversations and to bring stakeholders together where we bring up the tough issues, and in that process that nobody ever says no, 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 that we lock down and we don't push ourselves to think a little bit deeper and think about what is possible. And if something is unacceptable, how do you come back to the negotiating table with something that is possible? And this is an issue that has been challenging for the legislature for many years. And I will tell you that I think some of the previous proposals added as it relates to this specifically has been challenging, because equal funding does not mean equity for students. And throughout this conversation, the focus has now been to figure out how do we ensure there is equity. Equity for all students across the state of Colorado. And I know that sometimes it is uncomfortable for some to talk about how we still do not have an even playing field for many students. It is difficult for some to recognize the race disparities, the income disparities, how it can be challenging for students with disabilities to be able to succeed. And what this bill does is it empowers local control. It empowers school boards to come up with their plans to address the issue of equity for all students. And there's also carefully negotiated provisions in this bill that gets to the issue of transparency and making sure that there is accountability to the public. And I know that there are a lot of different stakeholders in education, and all of us care about the families that are in our districts. But as we went through this process, the one thing that continued to be on my mind were kids. Kids. The ones who have not been born into families that they will be able to have the very, very best schools based on wealth. Those who may be low income, those who may be at risk, those who are English language learners, those students who are students with disabilities. And how do we make sure that we honor the will of the voters, but also make it so that every boy and girl in this state have the opportunity to be able to reach their full potential? There are incredible educators. There are incredible teachers who spend their life's work trying to make sure that kids succeed, and we need to support them. But we also need to recognize that the status quo is not working for all. The status quo is not working for every family, and the status quo is not working for every kid. And if we truly believe that we want everyone to be able to succeed, then I ask for your vote on House Bill 1375. It is a compromise and a meaningful path forward to make sure that we go in the right direction so that all students can succeed. Thank you.
Representative Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem, and I definitely can't compete with the speaker on this, but members, I want to thank you. I know that everybody's anxious and tired, but if I can please ask everybody to pay attention. As Representative Wilson talked about, carrying a big bill like this, what it entails, what you go through, I have been on a roller coaster that is never ending, day to day, a moment to moment. I have been working on this for months, down to negotiating one word with people, one word, down to one sentence, and then ultimately one word. 4 o'clock on Sunday, a coalition that was united in ensuring that Senate Bill 61 was killed. Fundamental opposition. They were absolutely going to kill that bill, and that was what they were here to do. They were willing to come to the table because we were having a conversation about this in a different way. And they stayed at the table with me to actually move forward to a place that they were okay with this bill. It is frustrating for me when I hear concerns that have nothing to do with this bill, and actually, I agree, have to do with Senate Bill 61. This is a very different bill. This has nothing to do with the way that bill was laid out. That is why I worked on this. I didn't agree, I didn't think that it was fair to protect charter school kids with a guaranteed funding percentage that traditional schools did not have. So what we did was we tried to look at a plan to put it back into the district's hand to really make sure that they had the ability to specifically emphasize increased funding for our kids that have been historically disadvantaged. This is actually about equity because it isn't about funding them equally. This is about having the flexibility to prioritize the kids that need the money the most. Regardless of if you're in a magnet school, innovation school, traditional school, charter school. This is not about charter schools, and that is the intent of the bill from the beginning. This is about kids. And so when I hear about, pushback, I understand this is a big piece of legislation. If there is not one piece of legislation, big issues that we have come together to solve, where I didn't get constituents that disagreed with me, or I might have had to sit down and walk them through this bill and answer questions that they have. So I'm asking you to I just want to acknowledge all the people that came to the table for the last few months, everybody who's looking in from the window. I really appreciate your time, your feedback. To all the members who are part of this, the education committee that have been, as Representative Buckner said, this has kept her awake for numerous sessions now, this issue. And we have finally come to a place where people are okay. And I'm going to continue to have these conversations with districts that are associating this with a previous piece of legislation. This puts flexibility back at the districts and focuses on the needs of kids. And so, members, thank you for your time and your consideration and your patience. I really appreciate you.
Any further discussion? The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1375 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Pabon, Lee, Herod, and Gray. Please close the machine. With 46 yes votes, 19 no votes, House Bill 1375 is passed. Co-sponsors. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. All right, this feels like a long time ago, but that takes us back to Senate Bill 302. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 302.
Senate Bill 302 by Senator Quorum, also Representatives Catlin and McLaughlin, concerning clarification of the exemption from property tax of silvicultural equipment.
Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Anyway, I move for the passage of Senate Bill 302 on third reading and final passage.
Question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 302 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no discussion, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Arndt, Madam Majority Leader, Representative Lee, Representative Rosenthal. Please close the machine. With 58 yes votes, 7 no votes, Senate Bill 302 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 304.
Senate Bill 304 by Senators Martinez, Minnick, and Williams, also Representative Singer and Thurlow, concerning the authority of the Joint Technology Committee.
Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 304 on third reading and final passage.
Question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 304 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no discussion, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Garnett. Please close the machine. With 65 yes votes, 0 no votes, Senate Bill 304 is passed on third reading and final passage. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 306.
Senate Bill 306 by Senator Lambert, also Representative Hamner, concerning a direct transfer of money from the high-cost support mechanism to broadband deployment grant applicants for the proposed broadband deployment projects that have been approved by the Broadband Deployment Board for grant award in connection with requiring segregation funds for basic voice service for the voice of the broadband deployment.
Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 306 on third reading and final passage. I also offer a third reading amendment. Would ask permission to offer a third reading amendment.
Senate Bill 306 is properly moved. The question before us is the request to offer a third reading amendment. Madam Majority Leader, would you like to tell us why?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So we put an amendment on this bill last night, Representative Willett and I. So this takes a little bit of explanation. During the budget process, Representative Becker J. Put an amendment on the budget that I supported that puts $9.5 million from the High Cost Support Fund into the Broadband Fund. This is part of a larger ongoing effort to shift funding from traditional landlines over to broadband. Because in rural Colorado, one of the biggest obstacles to greater economic development is broadband. There were several bills back in 2014 that did a lot of things, but one was try to start shifting money into broadband. And it's actually, those bills have been ineffective in moving money to broadband. So Representative Becker offered his amendment. It stayed on the budget, so thank you JBC members for that. But the way the amendment was done, it needed a fix for the money to actually be distributed. So that is Senate Bill 306. That is that fix. In the meantime, several members of the legislature have been working on the bigger fix to get money from the high cost support fund over to the broadband fund. And it was getting to be the end of session, and we thought, well, we're not sure if we can get this done, and then we realized we could do it in this bill. So all the amendment did last night is redefine effective competition in a way and change the internet service speeds that are required to shift money from high cost support fund over to the broadband fund. And we'd been working on that with several stakeholders for a while. Today, those stakeholders said we need a couple more fixes, and so that's what the third reading amendment is. The third reading amendment keeps in a repeal, a sunset basically, of the high cost support fund. And so that's what the first part of the amendment does. The second part of the amendment addresses a section in the bill that in the original L001 that had removed the ratchet down of the cost, the fees on the high cost support fund. We're putting that back in at the request of some of the telecom lobby. So that's why I'm asking for a third reading amendment.
Any Representative Willett?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Majority Leader. No, I think she put it quite well, summarized it well, and also I ask for support of this third reading amendment. Thank you for your patience.
All right, the question before us is the request for permission for a third reading amendment. Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote on the request for permission. Representative Covarrubias, Representative Lundin, Representative Navarro. Please vote. Representative Lundin. And Representative Covarrubias, that'll be a $3 fine. We are in third reading.
Yeah, the sunset.
Representative Lundin, you have a $3 fine. You may want to get to your desk before it goes up.
Lundin.
All right, please close the machine. With 47 yes votes, 18 no votes, the request to offer a third reading amendment to Senate Bill 306 is passed. Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So to the amendment, I explained a
Would you
little
like
bit.
to move the amendment?
Oh, didn't I move it? I move L002.
Properly moved. Would you like to tell us why?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So several folks have asked for an explanation. As I said, this sunsets the high cost support mechanism, and it also keeps in place the ratchet down of the fees of the high cost support fund. And that was something negotiated in 2014. So overall, what we're trying to do in rural broadband is shift money from the high cost support fund, which is a fee that you pay on your phone bills, over to broadband, because that's what our residents, customers, citizens want. Some in the telecom industry who honestly are not affected by this at all want to see a bigger fix to an old bill called Senate Bill 152 that has to do with how local governments approve public-private partnerships for broadband in their communities. Many of us think that that is a conversation worth having and worth fixing, and we need to engage CML and CCI and the rest of the telecom lobby in fixing that. However, we don't want that conversation to slow down what we're doing on rural broadband, because they are essentially two separate issues. I have committed to the telecom lobby, and I've committed to CML and CCI, as has Majority Leader Holbert, to convene a stakeholder group to work on that issue over the summer and through the fall. But we do not want rural broadband deployment to be slowed down by that, because it's essentially a separate issue. So Representative Becker's original budget amendment is a good one, but it's a short-term, one-year thing. This is the longer-term fix to rural broadband, and I think is best for all of Colorado to do this. And it keeps in place, this amendment, L002, keeps in place the provisions that I mistakenly took out that makes them satisfied about what we're doing on the high cost support fund. So I'm asking for your support for that amendment.
Any further discussion on the amendment L002? Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This amendment, along with the amendment that was passed last night when a lot of us were not totally focused on what was going on the floor, and I plead a mea culpa to that one, are much more than just technical fixes. And this one, I mean, from what I understand, wireless providers pay the bulk of the high cost fund, and they weren't involved in this discussion at all. And that goes to my biggest concern on this. We're changing policy that was passed in 2014 without a stakeholder process, without a broad discussion. And I think that is something that, if we want to really fix broadband in Colorado, we need to have a much bigger, all-inclusive stakeholder process. And from what I understand, this is not an example of that broad stakeholder process. So I have some serious concerns with this, and I would ask for a no vote.
Any further discussion? Representative Jay Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this amendment just sunsets that high cost fund in 7 years and ratchets that down by 5%. It's actually a very good amendment, and would ask for an aye vote on that. And then we can get into the crux of what the amendment did last night. But I will tell you, To say that the stakeholders were not at the table, to say that they haven't been there for the last 3 years trying to get this through is just not the truth. We have been working on this and working on this and working on this and trying to get this through for rural Colorado, and it keeps getting held up by companies that are not even offering broadband in rural Colorado. So all I ask is vote yes on the amendment, and then we can get into the bill.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I will ask for a yes on this amendment as well. However, I do still have concerns about the underlying amendment that was added last night. However, from what I understand, this does solve a piece of the problem, just not the entire problem. And so, members, I ask that you do support this, and then let's continue to debate this issue, because I believe that quite a bit was done last night to a bill that was supposed to be a simple cleanup and ended up becoming a large policy change. So, members, let's get this out of the way, and then let's talk about the bill itself.
Any further discussion? Representative Mitch Bush.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
It's getting loud in here. We are on third reading amendment. Representative Mitch Bush.
I rise in strong support of this amendment. As Representatives Becker and Becker have explained, there was a stakeholder process. I was involved starting in 2014. That stakeholder process has gone on. Well, why didn't the solution that we came up with in 2014 work? Many different reasons. This amendment speaks to some of them, and the bill as a whole, which we'll get to, speaks to more. But this amendment is very, very important in terms of the sunset and the rest of this amendment. So I would certainly urge a yes vote for rural broadband.
Any further discussion on AL 002? Seeing no further discussion on AL 002, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote on AL 002. Representative Arndt. Representative Buck. Representative Buckner. Representative Hooton. Representative Michelson-Janae. Please close the machine. With 48 yes votes, 17 no votes, AL 002 is passed. Takes us back to Senate Bill 306. Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 306 on third reading and final passage.
As amended. Any further discussion? Representative Melton. Representative Mitch Bush.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Broadband is absolutely critical in all the areas of rural Colorado. It is critical for telecom. It is telehealth. It is critical for education. It is critical for agriculture. It is critical for our economies. But let me tell you a little bit more about the western slope in southern Colorado. One of the old saws in the broadband industry is distance, density, and terrain. The western slope and southern Colorado have difficulties with all three. The distances are large. That's true in the Eastern Plains too. The density is low. That's true on the Eastern Plains too. But in southern and western Colorado, that third one, terrain, makes it very, very difficult for companies to do this. I've been involved in rural broadband when I was a planning commissioner in the 90s in Routt County, a rural county that's very mountainous, has lots of valleys and great difficulties. In some of the towns, there's great broadband, but as soon as you get a little ways away, there is zero, nada, zilch. There have been federal laws to try to improve this. They've helped a little. We had our 2014 law that we had talked about to give money to rural broadband. The problem with that is it got a little waylaid along the way by various kinds of issues. This will really help to provide sustainable, long-term funding, and that's the issue. A lot of localities in rural counties have already taken great steps to do the middle mile. The final mile is not quite there. But moving back from the middle mile, let me tell you a story. Not once, not twice, but 3 times in 1 year, Routt County lost broadband. Why? There's only one fiber line that goes there. One and one only. If that gets cut, you're out of luck. So this is really an excellent bill for economic development, for rural health, for rural education, and I would urge a very positive and strong yes vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 306? Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I stand up in full support of Senate Bill 306. Thank you.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 306? Representative Rankin.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll just echo what folks have said. We've been doing this for years. This discussion has been going on for quite some time. Broadband in rural Colorado is like building the road network or electrification. It's the next big thing, and we have to do it. We have to do it for telemedicine. We're getting folks working at home who are working for front-range companies. Telecom is the major tool for what I like to think of as sharing the prosperity. I look out my window in my apartment here and I see 3 construction cranes. There are only 2 elevators in my whole district, I think. So, you know, we need to share the prosperity. Broadband is the tool. It's true that we started off, this bill was really just a bill to enable the Becker Amendment to the Long Bill, $9.5 million one time. We've taken a bold step here, but it's time to take that bold step on behalf of rural broadband. So I urge a yes vote.
Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I brought visuals for you to see today. This is a phone book. And this is my phone bill because I have 2 landlines that go into the house at the ranch, at the headquarters, because internet doesn't work everywhere. Cell phones don't work everywhere. So some of us in rural Colorado still have landlines. Cost me $71 a line. I used to have 3. Used to have 3 when all the children were there. And then back whenever you had dial-up on internet, it took another one. So I actually have 4-line phones in my house. I've whittled it down to 2, and I actually will probably break it down to 1. I was looking for a gun dealer in here out of Lahana, and he wasn't in the phone book. So we did have to look it up online. But we still use phone books. There are still landlines. And in the blizzard that I talked about the other day, guess what went out? Southeast Colorado Power was still working, but the phones went out. So, ladies and gentlemen, broadband is something that we have to be strong on, that we have to keep going forward. I have been a promoter of people staying in rural areas and older people staying on these ranches and farms. If they had broadband, if they were able to get their medicine, if they were able to get their checkups, if they were able to check their blood pressure, if they were able to do things from their home, it would make the difference in the world here in Colorado. And I just wanted you to know that because one of the state reps saw me using a phone book and laughed at me because I was looking something up one day, and I wanted you to know that there's still some of us that have those because we don't have broadband. And our neighbors are 100 miles away, and we need it desperately. So please vote for this bill. Thank you.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 306? Representative Lawrence.
Wow, that is loud. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I still have some serious concerns about this bill. And mainly it is because a lot of what we've done regarding broadband in a rush at the end of the session are major policy changes from the 2014 legislation that took years to develop. And here we are without stakeholder consensus, and I have continued to hear from AT&T, CenturyLink, which is the provider of last resort around the entire state, Verizon, Sprint, that they were not supportive of this, that Comcast and T-Mobile are neutral on it. I haven't heard any of them say they love this. And to me, that's my biggest concern. And I represent a county that does have broadband issues. Teller County doesn't have broadband everywhere, and neither does Douglas County, as a matter of fact. I have a lot of areas in the outlying parts of Douglas County that don't have broadband, so it is an issue. But rushing something through without a comprehensive stakeholder process is not the way to fix this issue. If you want to have a solution that fits every part of the state, then bring everyone into the discussion. And I don't think that was done on this bill, and especially on the amendments that supposedly made technical changes last night. A 6-page amendment is not a technical change. That was very substantive. It was very last minute, I don't know if any of us read it completely and compared it to the bill and former past legislation to see how it fits in. This is a very substantive discussion, and I think it deserves more time than we're giving it today. And so for that reason, I'm asking for a no vote on 306.
Representative Bullock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, folks, thanks for listening. My name's on this, and I won't say everything that's been said. It is so true that rural broadband is where it's at and where it's needed to be. As we struggle with oil and gas issues, we debate so many things down here, congestion in your roads on the Front Range. If we can open up the markets all over Colorado, if you can go over there to the West Slope or other rural areas in the Northeast, in the San Luis Valley, and take your laptop and be able to be connected, it is so, so important. The time of the high cost fund is gone. That was the time of telephones when they weren't served by cell and by cable-based networks. So what this does is it finally makes the shift. This has been worked on, as I understand it, for all the 3 years that I've been here. Senator Donovan worked her tail off on this and for a variety of reasons couldn't get it done, and I'll let you guess what some of those reasons are. I personally, as the term or the company CenturyLink has been talked about here, I have attended numerous meetings with them on the West Slope. I like the people that are over there on the West Slope, but you know what? All I seem to get is somewhat of a circular argument. It's always some problem. They need more customers before they can do the second mile. They need to ensure that they can make profit before the third mile. Guess what, folks? 3 years I've been here, nothing's gotten done. It is time to do something. This makes perfect sense. It's what we need to do as leadership. And it won't cost any additional money, and it does ensure a fair process for determining that these areas are indeed served and that there is indeed competition. Vote yes on the bill and appreciate the support.
Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 306. One of the things that's happening in rural Colorado is some of the players will come out and say, we've got the service, but it's not the service that you folks have got. Broadband is a big deal on the western slope of Colorado and in rural Colorado. We need it in order to continue to be the productive part of the state of Colorado in regards to natural resources, agriculture, and telemedicine. The time is now. The future is now. We need to be able to get into the market. Everyone wants to talk about the global market. It's hard to be in the global market if you can't get to it. Broadband gives us an opportunity to deal with the folks that are living in this on the urban corridor of the state of Colorado. You know, I've had people say to me, well, you know, you choose to live in western Colorado. That's right, we do. But if we were if we had broadband service, we would be a member of the state of Colorado. We would then be involved in the commerce. You would be able to order your food from Colorado, not have to move closer to it, which is one of the suggestions that I've made. But honestly and truly, I would like to see please support Senate Bill 306 with a yes vote. The time is now. Let's stand up and bring the rest of the state of Colorado into the future world. Thank you.
Representative Covarrubias.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, you don't have to be lonely at farmersonly.com. Now, how are our farmers going to get a date if they don't have broadband out in the rural areas? I'm just saying. I support Senate Bill 306. I urge a yes vote.
Wow. Any further discussion? Representative Jay Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, as we look at this issue, we've heard a lot in just the last half hour. We heard that the stakeholders haven't come to the table or haven't been brought to the table on this. I can tell you they've been brought to the table. It's just that they can't find a way to get rural broadband to rural areas. I've also heard that this isn't that important infrastructure for rural areas. We shouldn't compare this to roadways or other infrastructure that we put in. Well, let me explain this to you. The food that you eat relies on a broadband infrastructure and will rely more. Consider the farming equipment that sits in the field that communicates with wireless devices to make sure it can go through that field and we are planting correctly. We are making sure we add the right amount of spray correctly. That is what's happening here. As this technology increases, there is more and more of a need for it to do everyday things in rural Colorado that you rely upon here. That you rely upon here. And to say that we don't need it in rural areas, or you can rely upon HughesNet or CenturyLink, which has been mentioned, to get it to us. Let me tell you, I've lived just outside of the city of Fort Morgan for now 11 years. Just 3 years ago, I couldn't even get voicemail out of my telephone company that was wired to my house. Now ask for high-speed broadband. That does not happen. They've been at the table. I've been at every community meeting in eastern Colorado that has asked and begged for them to do it. And then we yell at the cities because they're taking it into their own hands to get this done. This is ridiculous. We are holding up rural broadband for big city problems. It is time for us to release it and finally allow it to go through. Then we'll have the conversation on whether or not we need the cities to be doing this work. I can tell you this is important. We rely upon these broadband and this to run our equipment now. We run our manufacturing, and then we say it is not important, yet manufacturers that come to the Front Range say, how is your high-speed broadband? But gosh forbid we ask for it for rural Colorado. And then we hang it up over problems that are happening in the Front Range. This is enough. This wasn't a last-minute deal that was put together last night. This has been coming for years. I am tired of it being blocked and stopped. I'd ask for your aye vote.
Any further discussion on Senate Bill 306? Seeing nobody. Representative, just kidding. Representative Pavone.
Madam Speaker, thank you.
Madam Speaker, and members, I just got word that the workers on the front line of these companies are opposed to this bill. And I don't know about you, but that makes a big difference to me, because those are the folks that are trying to implement this broadband expansion, that are trying to do the good work to implement connections and high speed and all the things we want for all the people of Colorado. And I strongly support, of course, broadband, and want to thank the majority leader for bringing this amendment, and of course, ostensibly the members of the Joint Budget Committee, but not really at all. And thank them for bringing up this conversation, because it's a good one. It's a good conversation. It's probably good policy. I'm just not sure it's the right process for today. And so I'm going to be a no vote. Again, not because I don't think the conversation has merit or the policy has merit, but the process needs to be revisited. I ask for a no vote.
Representative Hamner, our esteemed JBC member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And colleagues, just to clarify, even though Senator Lambert and I are carrying this bill and the other members of the Joint Budget Committee have signed on as co-sponsors, it's not technically a Joint Budget Committee bill. But don't worry about that. And so I do rise in strong support of Senate Bill 306 as amended. And I have to tell you, I have 5 counties in my district. I represent the people in Delta County, Gunnison County, Pitkin, Lake, and Summit. And I have represented them for 7 years, and I still cannot give them a good answer about why they can't have better broadband services in this part of Colorado. I've tried to explain it, and I really just can't. And so when this opportunity to have this amendment, which fits under the title of the bill, come forward last night, I jumped on and said, absolutely. Because if the people who are working on these issues can't solve the problem, they're turning to us to solve the problem. This is it's a very important issue for rural Colorado. It affects the economic activity, and it is important for us to stand together. And I'm very proud to stand together with those of you who represent rural parts of Colorado in support of the amended version of Senate Bill 306. I ask for a yes vote.
Any further discussion? Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So let me clarify. The High Cost Support Fund goes to primarily one provider, CenturyLink. It is a government subsidy that individuals pay on their bills to fund CenturyLink. And for years and years, we have known that that government subsidy is not being well used by CenturyLink. And it is upon us to fix that, because it is being used where it isn't needed and not being used where it is needed. It is needed in rural broadband. But like anyone who benefits from a government subsidy, they have a vested interest in making sure that never changes. CenturyLink was opposed to the bills run a few years ago that started to reform this. And it was so modest of reforms that it's actually done nothing for rural broadband. Most of my district is rural, and this is one of their top 3 issues. And it has to be fixed. And I refuse to not let it be fixed because one party who has a big subsidy says we don't want our subsidy to get smaller. But even if it did, and we started shifting money to rural broadband, guess what? They can apply for that money for rural broadband because they're also broadband providers. So I will not, everything on broadband gets captured by a single entity who has a particular interest in their own subsidy. And that's not how we should be governing here in Colorado. We should be governing for the people of Colorado. And what they need, what they are asking from us year after year, is shifting money from the High Cost Support Fund over to the Broadband Fund so they can get rural broadband. That's what this is about. And I contend that CenturyLink can apply for money in the Rural Broadband Fund, and they shouldn't be holding up progress on what the people of Colorado are asking us to do. And now I'm being told, well, The union that works for CenturyLink that's employed by them is opposed to this. I am sympathetic to union workers, but I want to see advancement on this issue for the people of Colorado. And I believe those workers will be able to work in broadband just like they're working on telephone lines. They are communication workers. They will benefit from having money in the broadband fund as well. That is not a reason to oppose the bill. Members, we hear about rural broadband. It was in the governor's opening day speech. It was in the Senate president's opening day speech. So we can do something, or we can just keep talking about it. I've held multiple stakeholder meetings about this. And what I've taken away from that is all these entities are never on the same page because they all want something different. CenturyLink wants their existing subsidy. Other entities want a different subsidy. The people of Colorado just want greater access to rural broadband because when you're in a rural area, it doesn't pay for providers to go on their own. They will only do it, just like they only did with electricity years ago or water delivery years ago, unless they have businesses will only do it if they have other financial backing. So that's what our role is to get broadband into rural areas faster. And I don't want to be held to some archaic formula that was from years ago when we only worked on phone lines. The world has changed. It's time that the legislature catch up with the rest of the world, which is focused on broadband. And I don't want to be held captured by one entity who's saying, we benefit from the way it is now, and change is hard. And there are other folks that wanted separate issue that I'm completely sympathetic to about having a conversation with CML and CCI on other broadband issues. Great, let's have that conversation. But everything in telecom is impossible to figure out in one bill. So we should move forward on rural broadband because that's what's right for all of our constituents. And we will continue to engage with CML and CCI and the private providers about the issues that they face. But they're separate issues. We can solve this problem and shouldn't hold everything captive because one provider doesn't want their subsidy to change and another, very fairly, is wanting their bigger issue, but separate issue addressed. I ask for an aye vote because moving money from landlines to broadband is what our constituents want. It's what's right for Colorado, and it's moving us in a forward direction. Thank you.
The question before us is a passage of Senate Bill 306 as amended. Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 49 yes votes, 16 no votes, Senate Bill 306 is passed as amended. Co-sponsors. Co-sponsors.
Alec.
Please close the machine.
Ms. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 240.
Senate Bill 240 by Senators John and Tate, also Representative Winter, concerning continuation of the regulation of business persons who sell vehicles in the ordinary course of business and in connection therewith implementing the recommendations on the report of the Department of Regulatory Agencies and making an appropriation.
Madam Majority Leader Becker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for this passage of Senate Bill 240 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 240 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no discussion, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote.
Madam Majority Leader, Representative Janal, Representative Kraft-Tharp, Representative Pabon. Please vote. I hate to disturb your conversation, but Representative Pabon, can you please vote? Representative Pabon is absent. All right, instead of being absent, Representative Pabon, that's $5. Representative Janal. Representative Janal is excused. Please close the machine. With 55 yes votes, 9 no votes, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 240 is passed.
Co-sponsors.
Please close the machine. Assistant Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the balance of the calendar until later today.
Seeing no objection, we will lay over the balance of the calendar until later today.
Yes, or just nothing? Yes. Stand in recess. Do we have bills or anything to read across?
Assistant Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock today.
We could deal until later today. However, it looks like there may be an announcement or introduction. Representative Kraft-Tharp.
Okay, Business Affairs and Labor Committee, I'm back. I have missed you so much. We're going to meet one more time today at 1:30 LSBA, and guess what? Representative Melton is nice enough to bring us a bill that's $275. So see you 1:30 LSBA.
Thank you, Representative Kraft-Tharp. And members, we do have some things that we need to read across the desk. So let's do that real quick, and then we'll do announcements and introductions. Introduction of bills.
Senate Bill 275 by Senators Baumgartner, John, also Representatives Melton and Singer, concerning marijuana in connection therewith, authorizing research regarding the safety and efficacy of medical marijuana and the safe and effective use of pesticides, establishing interim standards for the use of pesticides in connection therewith, making an appropriation.
Senate Bill 275 will be assigned to the Committee on Business Affairs and Labor. Introduction of resolutions.
House Joint Resolution 1036 by Representative Becker Kay, also Senator Holbert, concerning adjournment sine die.
HAR 1036 will be laid over one day under the rules.
Senate Joint Resolution 43 by Senator Quorum, also Representative McLaughlin, concerning urging the Colorado's executive branch to file a lawsuit against the Federal Environmental Protection Agency for damages caused by the spill at the Gold King mine.
SJR 43 will be assigned to the Committee on Health Insurance and Environment. Announcements and introductions. Representative Pabon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members of the Finance Committee. I know we thought that we would not be meeting again, but there's word out there that there may be some bills that come out of health insurance, environment, judiciary, or business that if they make it out, Finance Committee will be hearing those bills. I don't know what they are, I don't know what they do, but we'll find out in a few hours. And that meeting will likely, without knowing much more, be held at the well, but we will let the committee know via Bitmoji or something of that sort. So please stay tuned.
Any further announcements or introductions? Representative Lee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Judiciary Committee, we will have two bills that we will be seeing upon adjournment, Senate Bill 12 and 301. I announced a different bill this morning, but it'll be 12 and 301 at 1 o'clock? 1 o'clock.
Representative Kraft-Hart.
Okay, so upon the advice of those more qualified than I, it has been suggested that we meet at 1 o'clock instead of 1:30, Business Affairs and Labor Committee, LSBA. So still be there, okay? Thanks.
Representative Janal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Health Insurance and Environment. We'll meet in 10 minutes in room 107. We have 4 bills currently. Senate Bill 300, Senate Bill 19, Senate Bill 21, and SJR 43.
Any further announcements or introductions? Representative Young.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Appropriations is going to meet at some point today. I should have just tag teamed right on Representative Pabon's announcement because I'm not sure exactly what bills we may be hearing, but any bills that make it through some of these other committees are ones that we may be hearing right now. I think we'll be hearing at least Senate Bill 40, but we may have others on the agenda. Likely we'll be meeting in the well, so keep tuned, members. Thank you.
Further announcements or introductions? Assistant Majority Leader Garnett. Is it an announcement or introduction? We do have a couple more things we need to read across. Okay. Assistant Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, just a reminder that after afternoon committees meet, please come back here. We have business to take care of, and Hummers will be this afternoon. If you don't know what Hummers are, go ask a senior legislator.
Any further announcements or introduction? Introduction of bills.
Senate Bill 21 by Senator Martinez-Dominic, also Representative Singer, concerning reentry services for persons with mental illness in the criminal justice system.
Senate Bill 21 will be assigned to the Committee on Health Insurance and Environment.
Senate Bill 301 by Senator Scott and Marble, also Representatives Becker Kay and Sane, concerning injury-related statutes in connection therewith reducing an appropriation.
Senate Bill 301 will be assigned to the Committee on Judiciary. All right. Any further announcements or introductions? All right, members, you are free to go. We have a couple of things that we have to work on back here. Reports of committees of reference. Mr. Randolph.
Committee on Education. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1344 be postponed indefinitely.
Conference committee reports.
First report of the First Conference Committee on House Bill 1004. This report amends the re-revised bill. To the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, your First Conference Committee appointed on House Bill 1004 concerning a statewide policy for forwarding college credit for military education and training is met and reports and is agreed upon the following that the House accede to the Senate amendment.
Conference committee reports will be printed in the journal. Printing report.
Chief Clerk reports the
Printing
following
report
bills.
will be printed in the journal. Delivery of bills to the governor.
The Chief Clerk of the House of
Delivered bills to
Representatives.
the governor will be put in the journal. A message from the Senate.
Madam Speaker, the Senate has
Message
passed on
from the
third.
Senate will be put in the journal. A message from the reviser.
We herewith transmit without
Message from the
comment.
reviser will be put in the journal. That's it. With that, the House will stand in recess until later today.